Welcome to Abstract Audio, the podcast presenting life as an abstract art form. The show that encourages you to perceive beyond the tangible, to extract the infinite from the finite, to see with the mind what you cannot physically see with the eyes. Oh, it's an emancipation. It's an exploration into areas usually overlooked. Explore with me on today's episode. Ready? Alrighty. Now, you all know we've been getting into some heavy, really thought-provoking conversations this season. You know, last week we cracked open the complexities of loyalty and how it's this like mix of virtue and trust and tension. But today we are bringing it a step further. We're bringing in a very special guest who knows a lot about navigating the messy waters of tradition, loyalty, and everything in between. She's an author, a mother, a creative, an entrepreneur. She's the true embodiment of hustle and heart. And soon she's going to be stepping into the podcasting world herself, sharing her own unique perspective with all of us. Today, she's here joining this conversation, bringing some wisdom, some lived experiences, and maybe even some laughs to the mic today. So let's give a warm Abstract Audio welcome to Tina B. Tina B, I'm so excited to have you here.
Hi.
Hi. How are you? How are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing good. You don't have to forgive me. I am very nervous. This is my first time doing this ever. I'm very afraid of being in front of the camera. And I'm going to stumble over my words here and there, but y'all just bear with me as we try.
Absolutely. That's what editing is for. That's what editing and post is for, girl. We are fine. And I know today's conversation will definitely resonate with both you and your perspective and your audience to be. So let's jump right into it. You know what it's about. We're doing loyalty and tradition. And these are really two concepts that are so closely tied to, like you were saying earlier, our identities and the way we move through the world and our relationships. But they can also kind of hold us back in so many ways that we don't always realize. That's why I wanted to touch on it. So to kick things off, how do you personally define loyalty? You know, is it more of a virtue for you? Is it more of a choice or something entirely different? How would you say?
That is a really good question. Loyalty, it really is both a virtue and a choice. Because loyalty is either naturally in you or it's not. Either are a person who, that's who you are. That's, part of your moral. That's part of your genetic makeup. You are just a loyal person. It's either in you or it's not. Yes, you can learn to become loyal. However, is it
genuine?
Yes. Is it genuine is the question. If you have to learn how to be loyal to someone, is it genuine? And I understand circumstances. Some people really do grow up with nobody. They grow up with nothing. They have no one to rely on but themselves. And that's completely and totally understandable. On the other side of that, it most definitely needs to be a choice. I need to be able to be allowed to choose who and what I'm going to be loyal to. Those who know me know that my mother grew up in a cult, a realized actual cult. My mom was about 11 years old, maybe a little bit younger, I think. My mom was born in Chicago. Her mother and father, they had a total of 5 children. And forgive me because I don't know every exact detail verbatim, but what I do know is that somewhere in the 60s, my mom was born in the late 50s. Somewhere in the late 60s, early 70s, my grandfather, kidnapped all 5 of his children, quote unquote kidnapped, because he was their father, all 5 of his children, and took them from Chicago to Israel without their mother knowing. That's the kidnapping, because he really, I think my uncle at the time, their youngest son was 9 months old, and he took all of his children and without their mother's knowledge, without their mother's consent, and moved them from America to Israel. They lived in several parts of West Africa, Sierra Leone, some other places, during their travels to get to Israel. I mean, they slept in tents, they slept in huts, they slept in sleeping bags. It was wild. And my mother, they were raised in this community. And I'm not exactly sure. I'm just now getting into the entire history of it all, because it's been a very sensitive sore spot for me for quite some time. So again, forgive me. But basically, it was a large group of people who migrated from their homes, Chicago, Atlanta, all over, and Georgia, all over. And they all left, uprooted. They took their entire families and moved to Israel. Their women lived under complete servitude. Some of their laws were completely, totally, utterly ridiculous. And when I say women were born into servitude, they were allowed to go to school. They were allowed to learn to read and write and all that good stuff. But women were to be hardcore nurturers and nothing more at all. Like, you are to literally cater to whatever man you're paired with.
Such a culture shock.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you feel comfortable enough to speak on this today, because it's such a different reality than most people are used to. And we kind of take these things for granted that we have available to us over here. And it's interesting too that we met on this topic, because a literal cult, and even aren't all traditions, when you think about it though, a little cult that the rituals, the blind allegiance, the unspoken rules that you don't dare break, all steeped in because that's how it's done, how it's always been done. And I'm really mad, because tradition is something that claims to ground us, offering some stability, just like a cult would, offering stability, things you don't have in the outside world. But most of us follow traditions nowadays without really even understanding their origins. Like with your grandfather, he took his kids. They're not even really understanding what's happening just yet, and just like we don't even really understand the origins of things. So it's like, are we carrying forward something meaningful, or are we just glorifying someone else's old idea, possibly a bad idea?
Yeah, it was. Like I said, it was crazy. Where they had settled in Israel was the land of, they call it the land of milk and honey. It's the promised land. It's the golden land, the land that was promised to God's people. Everyone else, especially those in America, they're going to burn, and this, that, and the third. And so, like I said, my mother left the community when she was in, I want to say, her early 30s, I think, is when she left. Like I said, she was raised in the cult. My father joined, to my knowledge, later after as an adult, and that's where they met, and they raised us in this cult culture. We were raised vegan from birth. My mother made a good majority of our clothes. We did go to school, but we spoke Hebrew, and we didn't eat the way traditional Americans eat. We ate Mediterranean food, Middle Eastern food. My mom made everything from scratch. When I say my mom was in complete servitude to us and our father, and that's how they raised us. And so one day, we had been raised vegan all our lives, and one day we had all went out to this restaurant, which almost never happened. It was I don't remember what the occasion was. It was a really big deal for us to go out to a restaurant. I mean, it was 5 of us. And then my dad had like 4 other kids. So it was 9 of us in total. Right. There's so much to this. We're at this restaurant, and my father's oldest son, there's a reason I refer to him that way. My father's oldest son asked if we could try eating meat. And my dad was like, you know what? Go ahead. Okay. So you're talking about a bunch of, we were like, I think between 8 and 16, 17. There was a bunch of us, about between the ages of 8 to 17 at that time. We eating chicken, we eating beef, anything but pork. We were not allowed to eat pork. Right. We couldn't understand why my father all of a sudden, because my father, like, that was the head of the household. He was the leader of the family, like, whatever he say, go. And he wasn't one of those, there are so many different versions of my father, but, you know, he was really one of those, like, don't speak, don't talk, don't move.
Right.
You flinch wrong, you getting beat, or you getting cussed out, or you trouble. Like, don't do it. You don't question this man. Look, he say jump, you say how high, and then you better go higher than that and impress him. So you're gonna get your ass whooped if you don't. But it was so crazy. So the next day, of course, we all sick. We never ate beef before in our lives.
Right, exactly.
So the next day we all sick. We all toe up, and it was shortly after that. There was a traumatic event between my mother and my father. After that, my father split up. And after that, we were no longer who we were.
Wow.
The life that we were living, the culture that we had been raised in, all of a sudden, it was just like, yeah, we're not doing that no more.
Just different. Wow. From then on out.
I'm a teenager at this point. No, I wasn't a whole teenager. I was about, I was about 13. About 12. I think I was 12 going on to 13. And so, I mean, what do we do now? And so, you know, and my mother and, you know, my siblings and I, we were all forced to live these traditions and to carry this loyalty and to never question this loyalty or these traditions out of fear of ramifications and repercussions. You know, fear we're going to get in trouble from our father, fear we're going to get in trouble from our mother, fear we're going to get in trouble from God, fear we're not going to get into the promised land, fear that people are going to look at us and judge us and say this about us and say that about us. Like, we were raised to fear so much.
Yes.
We were raised to fear so much. And it's crazy because it's like at some point, somebody's got to say, hold up, wait.
Right.
Why do I have to be afraid of this? This is not making sense.
Right.
Somebody has got to be the one to say, you know what? I'm not with this shit at all. This is some goofy ass shit that don't make no sense. It don't serve me. It's not making me happy. It's making me miserable. You gonna sit here and tell me that I gotta put up with my husband wanting 2 or 3 other wives because he the man and he can't have no bank account, drive no car. I can't eat salt on fucking Wednesday.
Bullshit. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I hate that kind of freedom or that change, such a large change in your life came after such a seemingly happy occasion because you know, especially such excitement, right? But and you're kind of locked into that mindset as well. But you know, this wasn't just about religion or holidays or a fun time for you. It was just life. And so it's like you were saying, the extreme end of the spectrum here. It raises the same questions we ask about acceptable religions at all. You know, what do you accept, and what would you say makes something worthy of even becoming a tradition? You know, is it repetition? Exactly. Is it just emotional resonance? You know, is it just peer pressure almost? What would you think it makes something worthy of becoming a tradition?
In my opinion, what makes something worthy of becoming a tradition is something that is not only going to be beneficial to one specific person or one specific family, but more than that. your family, their family, their like generational, something that can be benefited from generational, something that's not going to cause any potential harm, but something that can be cultivated over time to grow and mature and go on to create other benefits, other assets. Like, that's really what it needs to be about. It doesn't need to be about staying on the straight and narrow with this set of rules because this jackass way back in Moses' days said, you know what, God said do this, but you know what, I really don't like what he said, so I think I'm gonna say this. Because that's really how I think it went.
That's really how it goes.
Over and over again. So you really don't know what or who to believe. So who to say is law? Like, this is how shit has to be. And especially if people are suffering and miserable from it. Like, this is why we have so many mental health issues, because people are not allowed to speak. They're not allowed to feel. They're not allowed to disagree. They're not allowed to disappoint. They're not allowed, like, this is so crazy. All of these emotions are not allowed to have, not allowed to deal with, and then forced out into a world where they're forced to have to deal with that shit, and they don't know what to do with it. That's why you got people out here crazy as hell. You got people in prison that's done bugged the fuck out because now he over here robbing him because he don't know what to do with himself, and he angry as hell, and you got what he want, and boy, look.
That's exactly what it is. It's a tradition or tradition is a collective habit that's gone just viral across generations, but that doesn't mean it's worth keeping. And even looking back, like, even if you look at society now and looking back, as you were saying, even like that sense of nostalgia is really trippy because of the meaning we give it. You know, it can turn something as simple as like something like old pictures or clothes into something that's meaningful, into sacred things almost. And it hasn't earned that title, you know. And it's like nostalgia might actually be one of the most dangerous parts of tradition looking back, because you know, you look back, especially Black people, you know, you look back on the good old days, you know, without asking if those days were really that good for anybody, were really that good for everyone. Sure, you know, your grandma's secret recipe is great, but you know, what about the oppressive gender roles that that said she had to be in the kitchen in the first place, right? You know, and we idolize even your grandma, your grandpa, and your parents too. We idolize those kind of old school relationships, but ignore the abuse. You know, we ignore all that other bullshit that supposedly kept them together, and it's never ending. Just like you said, it's a cycle. It's never ending because grandma stayed. And her grandma stayed, and her grandma stayed, and her grandma stayed, and so on. And then you've got people out here who don't know what they're doing anymore or why they're doing it. You know, that's the dark side of tradition.
Exactly. And I'm going to tell you like this. I'm not staying. I'm not staying. I'm not standing in line. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. Y'all can kiss my ass. I'm not going. Not no more. I am not doing it no more. I wrote a poem. The poem that I wrote for this my self-love therapy journal, and this poem that I wrote, the first like 2 lines, or the first couple of lines, said something like, all my life I've been chasing a dream that I never dreamt, a dream that was dreamt for me by people who had no intention of me having my own dream. Something along them lines.
That hits. Oh,
that really is what I realized. You know, by following these traditions, these generational traditions of how we are supposed to live our lives in order to have a good life or a good eternity or a pure heart or a pure soul, you know? And that's, like I said, traditions are great. Traditions could be wonderful. There's nothing wrong with traditions. I feel like traditions hold stories and memories, things that need to be told and retold. Traditions hold history, which is great. However, history changes. History changes. Traditions need to change with history.
I completely agree, and you know that saying that they have that history is told by the winners, and And that's so unfortunate, even when you think about it like that, because there's been all this trauma, this abuse, addiction, and they just get repackaged by the winners as, oh, that's just how it is. Or even families, that's just how our family is. But it's really dysfunction a lot of times masquerading as tradition. And a lot of times it's harder to break through that dysfunction when you've just been told that, like, oh, our family just has alcoholics in it. We're just prone to alcoholism. And there is a little, like you said, there's some good in it. There is some scientific merit to that kind of thing, but it's still possible to overcome that, alcoholism in this example. But once it's in your head, once you get it in your head that that's just who you are, you just start to believe it, and it's just a mess, really. And not everything that we inherit is worth keeping, whether good or bad. Is there anything you learned from your experience with the cult, and that your family with the cult, that you think is worth keeping or passing down?
One of the main messages of the cult was community, family, brotherhood, sisterhood. Wholeheartedly, 100%. Family, community, all of that's all important. However, the family or the community that you were born into does not have to be the family or the community that you live your life in. Because I promise you, you can create your own family. I did.
Yeah. They're worthy of your love. And even say, take marriage. If we're talking tradition, take marriage, for example. People argue that it's this sacred tradition, but is it, or is it just a long-standing legal economic arrangement, because if marriage didn't exist, would we invent it today? I think it's something, and a lot of things in general, it's something that needs to just be constantly revisited. Right? You shouldn't just accept it because it is. It should be constantly revisited. Exactly. Nostalgia, that tricks us into thinking the past was simpler and better. Sure, it was simpler, but it doesn't mean it's better, and that simplicity, I like to think that simplicity came at the cost of somebody else's complexity, and family traditions, especially, for that black sheep out there, for the queer kid, for the whoever it is who dares to question that family hierarchy. It can be a form, I'm sure you know of this very well, but it can be a form of almost emotional entrapment. There a point,
it's definitely emotional entrapment. I'm telling you, emotional entrapment is so big today. Mental slavery is, mental slavery is winning. It's strong out here. And once someone has enslaved you mentally, it's so hard. My mom is 60. My mom just turned 67 this year. I'm sorry, Mom, tell your business. You good. We love you. She is just now, for the first time in her life, living on her own and taking care of herself and being independent in her life.
Wow. Oh, wow. And I'm sure she just felt trapped for so long. Have you ever, in or out, of your early teens, when was the point when you felt the most trapped?
I felt the most trapped about 3 years ago. That's when I felt the most trapped. I mean, like I said, I was already out of that lifestyle, but I was still loyal to people that had hurt me. And so a situation happened. We had a death in the family, and I ended up getting partial custody of one of my nieces, and my first niece, actually. I was already all over the place. Like I said, I've always dealt with major depressive disorder, PTSD, extreme anxiety, all that good stuff. So this happened, and I jumped into super aunt. I'm like, don't worry about it. We're gonna take very good care of you. We got you. Don't worry. And so she, her mom, and then me and my niece, like this, that's my girl, my first niece. That's my child, my first child. And so, and her and my daughter had always gotten along great. So it was a no-brainer. It was a no issue. Like, yes, you're coming with me. I'm coming to get you. You're going to come home with me. Child, so much happened. So much happened. So much happened. One of the biggest things that I learned was that, because I've always been the type to, when something happens to me, I've always been able to very quickly, you know, like push it off, push it away, like it didn't happen, you know, and continue to function normally. You know, even continuing to live in the same house with the people that were abusing. Like, it was fine. When that little girl came into my house, and I had to provide for her and figure things out for her and take care of her. And it wasn't like I was doing it by myself. It wasn't.
Right.
It was the fact that I now was in the care of my abuser's child. Because my abuser never got his shit together. You know, never really grew out of the shit that he was doing. Because mind you, this started happening when we were kids. So in my mind, I'm like, you know what? We're older now. We're adults.
Right.
We're just not even gonna go there. We're not gonna think about it. This is a child. I got this. I can do this. It's no problem. It's no problem.
Was it the newfound responsibility, the extra responsibility you'd say that made you feel trapped, or more so that you were trapped in that situation that kind of never went away?
It was the fact that after everything that I had been through, I thought that I was past it. I thought that I had dealt with it, but it was right back in my face. Having to deal with her father, the reason of why he's not capable of taking care of her is what triggered me. Because you out here doing this instead of being an adult, instead of taking care of your children, instead of worrying about your family, instead of worrying about anybody else but yourself.
Right.
After everything you did to me, now I have to do this for you.
Oh, I can imagine.
It triggered me really, really hard. And on top of everything else that was going on, my life is constantly life or death. It's constantly a battle. And that is when I really, truly felt the most entrapment. You know, because I was like, you know what? At that point, I was like, we had no communication whatsoever because I had dealt with it. Right. Now I'm forced to be in communication.
Oh, that's got to be so tough. And I'm glad you're out of that situation now. And I'm also glad that you were able to take your niece and do something that would benefit the whole, benefit all of you. And you saw that opportunity and you took that. And I'm so glad that you did.
Trying to stay loyal and follow tradition, I damaged that little girl. I damaged my little girl. I damaged myself. There was a lot of damage
at least you
to
can
follow tradition and loyalty.
That's a big deal. Just think racism, sexism, you know, all these kind of systems, you know, of oppression are so often upheld in the name of tradition, you know, and I'm glad you took that girl out of that cycle, because think about how long it took to dismantle things like segregation laws or even allowing women to vote. You know, why? Because society has treated them as if they were sacred traditions rather than harmful practices. And that's goes for a lot of reasons, you know, but I feel like the biggest one out here that stands out to me is money. For instance, you know, I don't know if you got any money specifically for that situation. I hope you did, because raising kids is not cheap, you know.
No,
but
I did it. Well, I'm gonna say I did it. I did get some money, but you know, it was all spent on the kids, and because you know she got benefits from her mother when she passed, and Her father was here and there spending money, but I had to call like, hello.
Yes.
You have a kid up here. She needs things. You need to provide for your child. It shouldn't be an argument. I should not have to do this.
I can't stand that.
It triggered me and it set me off. And you know, the thing that bothers me the most is this dream that everybody is selling is a huge lie. And they use tradition and they use loyalty to keep people entrapped in that lie. There's whatever. There ain't no damn promised land. There is no promise. There is no, the American dream that they're selling, that's not the real American dream. The American dream is freedom. You have to buy your freedom. There's no other way around it. You have to buy your freedom, and freedom costs a big ass bag.
Exactly.
You have to buy your freedom.
Exactly. It makes sense how emotional you are about it because all of this isn't just emotional either. And I love that you brought the American dream into it because it's not just emotions anymore. After a while, it's an economy. Like even we talked about weddings, and the holidays are coming up, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and I'm glad you have the family together now. But it's entire industries that rely on our need to keep these traditions alive, but tradition, it sells because it's predictable. You don't have to think, you just do what everybody else is doing and voila, capitalism got your ass. You know what I mean? So it's really, literally. Literally. It's unfortunate because it's so rarely questioned, because it feels safe, but it's not safe. Advertisers, corporations, governments all bank on that feeling, literally. It's a commodity. We're a commodity in general, but tradition is a commodity, packaged and sold back to us. It gets scary, and like you mentioned before, fear comes in because what happens if you don't participate? You're the outlier, the Scrooge, the family disappointment, at best. And it really just pisses me off because it forces conformity and monetizes guilt. It monetizes guilt. It's so fucked up. And even if we don't look at the money aspect of things, we can even look at it spiritually. I'm not sure if you're a super religious person, but think about it. Our personal, right? I'm the same boat. But those personal habits, shape our daily lives. But like those collective habits, shape entire societies. And nowhere is that more evident than in religion, It's the OG tradition. It thrives on collective participation, rituals, shared beliefs, but religious traditions are kind of prioritized to the group they prioritize the group over the individual. And I don't like that at all, because your personal needs, they become irrelevant. The group is what matters, so I can see both sides.
That is completely true. A lot of these religions and laws and tradition and these loyalty guidelines are used to control a certain group, and that group serves usually a certain individual.
Exactly.
I got a problem with that.
Exactly.
I really do. I got a problem with serving a single one individual that I am being taught to believe is the answer to all of my woes, all of my worries, and all of that. And then all I got to do is talk to this individual. All I got to do is pray and devote myself to this individual, or these set of rules, these laws, that's all I have to do, and my life will be everything that it's supposed to be. Right. You gonna sit there and tell me that's just your will be done?
Yes.
Oh, I'm swinging.
It don't sit right with me.
I'm swinging. No, you're not gonna sit there and tell me that was what was supposed to happen. That was for the greater good. That's part of some greater grand. I will knock your
No. Like, no. And either way, it's a reminder that traditions aren't just about the past and everything that happened back then. They're also about, like you said, controlling the present, controlling the present too. So let's go ahead and tackle the big question, right? Exactly. But let's go ahead and tackle the big question, the question of the hour. Are these traditions meant to be broken? You know, some people say if it ain't broke, you know, don't fix it. But what if tradition itself is the thing that's broken?
I don't think that traditions necessarily need to be broken, right? Because all in all, the overall message is good. The overall message is usually good. So instead of breaking them, let's break them down and let's analyze them and let's see where we can adjust things and pivot them and actually make them true.
Yes.
Let's do that. Because there's nothing wrong with traditions. You know, I like traditions, you know, and I'm for them. But let's make them make sense for the good of everybody, not just the good of one. Let's make them for the love and protection of everybody and not just the love and protection of one. Let's make them for now.
And it's just like the government. It's just like you're exactly right. You hit the nail on the head, because it's just like the government, or law enforcement in general, the police. It's serving its purpose. A lot of times, you know, it's serving its purpose. It's just its purpose is not covering us. That's not what it's doing.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you're right. Traditions are just rules, you know, and rules are meant to evolve and change. Society evolves.
Exactly.
People evolve. Technology evolves. But for some reason, we cling to these outdated things like they're sacred. And like you said, fear. Why fear? You know, fear of change, fear of losing that identity that came with that, fear of the unknown. And we actually did it's funny, we actually did a great episode on season 1 about fear. And I'm mad I didn't even loop that in at the time. But that's why we're here. Full circle. And it's not about, you know, disrespecting the past a lot of times. It's about creating a better space, a more inclusive space for a better future. So maybe the ultimate tradition, you know, we need to break is the one that says tradition is always sacred, because it's not about the past.
That is the only tradition that needs to be broken. That is the only one that I can agree with. Let's break that right now.
If it's not serving us, it's time to let it go. And I hate to let you go, but, you know, I wanted to thank you so much for being such a fantastic co-host and sitting in with us today. Go ahead and give the people all your info. Tell them where they can find you.
I do have a Instagram page and a Facebook page, I believe. Look for me at Blunt Conversations, trigger warning. Or Blunt Conversations TW on Instagram. There it is. Blunt Conversations TW on Instagram.
Yes, girl, and I can't wait to tune in. I know it's going to be fantastic. Oh, thank you so much once again. You heard the lady. Be sure to go follow and support. Follow us on all the socials. Stay tuned for updates. Thanks so much for tuning in, you guys. And don't forget, always appreciate the abstract in your life.